New videos every day.
Okay, I'm John Breeding. I'm wearing my tie-dye t-shirt because I went to the 6th annual Rocky Erickson Psychedelic Ice Cream Social yesterday, and it was terrific. But I met a woman there who'd seen one of my videos, one on antidepressants that maybe some of you have seen. She said, "You mean they don't work?" Well, that's what the evidence shows. No better than placebos. They tend to create the very symptoms they are said to treat over time if they don't make things worse. No more effective than exercise, etc., etc. Plus, they got the idea of this false belief that you have a chemical imbalance, right? And so you believe in that, and that you need the drugs, so then you're not really dealing with what else maybe would really get you better. And you're creating an actual chemical imbalance by taking these toxins into your system. All that. But she says, "You mean they don't work?" He says, "I've been taking these for 10 years, and I've been depressed. But I was afraid not to take them because I figured I'd be depressed worse if I wasn't taking them." That's kind of a sad statement. She heard this information, and now maybe she's looking at the possibility of some alternatives. Coming off the drugs, of course, she'll need to do it very, very gradually because she's been on them for a long time. There's plenty of advice about how to do that from my books or from Peter Bregan and David Cohen's Your Drug May Be Your Problem, or from internet websites like theroadback.org. There's plenty of advice about how to gradually withdraw from the drugs. It can be difficult, but it can definitely be done. But what I wanted to say here about this story is that it just shows what a cynical, hopeless path this idea is, that you can never be well without your drugs, and that there's no way to prove their lack of efficacy because the interpretation is just that you would be worse without them. Or if in fact they make you worse, it's not because the drugs are making you worse, it's because your disease is progressing. So kids go from ADHD to bipolar, psychosis or whatever, and it's not blamed on the stimulant drugs that create the so-called bipolar symptoms and those drugs that create the so-called psychosis symptoms. And you get this lifelong consumer dynamic of more and more drugs, and it's the mess that we're in. There's no way to get around it because you're accepting the basic premise that you are defective and that the drugs are necessary to treat and keep under control this defect that you have to live with the rest of your life. Since the drugs don't work, eventually you're going to be disillusioned and you're going to end up dead, dying on average 25 years younger than those who don't take these psych drugs long time, right? Or you're going to just be feeling hopeless, or if you're lucky, you sort of maintain at a little less than optimal existence, right? But at some point, if you're lucky, you become disillusioned. I always tell people when they take the drugs and they don't work right away and they have bad reactions, I say, "You're lucky." And they'll say, "I wish it had worked." Say, "You're lucky it didn't." Right? Because now you can be free of this and go through what you need to go through as a transformational process. And look at what it is about your life and lifestyle. There's lots of solutions, there's lots of resources, but they don't generally exist within the mental health system, because most of those resources are oriented towards the idea that you're defective. And especially in terms of psychiatry and the biological psychiatric treatments, they're just going to make it worse. But in terms of nutrition, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of sleep and rest, in terms of healthy inputs and stimulations, in terms of exercise, in terms of taking care of yourself physically, in terms of building relationships and emotional support, figuring out friends, figuring out, the church, if that's a place where you get support, mending with the family if that's possible, or cutting off with the family if it's not possible, and building a personal family. Getting involved with some sort of activism that is meaningful for you and service to others. people who join our work in terms of challenging psychiatry and standing for safe space for people. The artist standing for safe space for artists and a ridding of electroshock, like our Ice Cream Social documentary shows. Whatever it is, right? Helping other people withdraw from psychiatric drugs. Building an exercise club and a team bicycle ride, Joining reevaluation counseling and just listening and talking to each other. Going canoeing. Right? Talking and listening to people. Taking time. Turning off the noise a little bit. Really being careful about what you put in your mouth. Right? Drinking a lot of water. Finding people who know how to think about the body in a way that isn't just from a pharma perspective of adding drugs. Recognizing that life is difficult and challenging and that you're not wrong if you're having a hard time. People have hard times. Life has its ups and downs. Transformation is an ordeal sometimes. The hero's journey of withdrawal, initiation, return. There's periods in life where we have to pull back from this outward, happy, productive focus and go through some sort of initiation of transformation and change. And then we return, supporting ourselves and our friends to do that. That's where real hope lies.